Schepers and Nina Dekker. This is me, Tinkerbell. You wrote me an email because you are studying at the Art Academy in The Hague and you are writing some kind of thesis and you had some questions for me. So I'm making this video for you to answer your questions, and also because it happens that kind of a lot of students are writing me kind of similar questions. So I put this video on YouTube and other students can use this video. So hi, and here are your questions and I will answer them on the spot. So your first question was, how do you start a project and where do you find your subjects or topics? Well, usually, so most of the time, this brain or whatever is in my head is completely overloaded. Because I'm always working on different projects at the same time, and I'm not sure if you know, but like 95 or maybe 98% of the work is research. So this means that there's a lot of information in my head, and only with part of it, or only part of the things that I'm doing is actually the project, or the part of the project that you can see. So it's overloaded all the time, but sometimes when I just finish something, or I just found out something new, or I have some kind of, I don't know, well, situation in which there, in which that creates an opening in my mind, kind of a little bit of space. At these times, that's the dangerous part. To talk with me, because whoever talks with me then, or whatever I read then, could be a new project, because that's the only time that there's space or an opportunity to enter my brain for a new project. Of course, not everything is acceptable or interesting or whatever. So for example, subjects that are subject for a lot of artists or a lot of people, like, I don't know, climate change. Climate change is a big thing, but till now I didn't work with climate change as a subject, as a literally subject for my work. That is because a lot of people are already working on it. This is not, so that makes it not really interesting for me. What does make it interesting is when a subject is supposed to be not sexy, or not interesting, or for most of people, because then there's an importance of someone taking up this subject and make it into a project and make it sexy for a bigger audience. So that's kind of how it works. I know it sounds a little bit vague. It is also a little bit abstract because it always happens on, well, in different ways. But this is kind of how it works in my brain. Okay. Can you tell us what you are currently working on? Yes, I can. This is actually right now, it is April 2019, a very, very boring period. Because this is a period in which I have to write proposals to get funding for new projects. One of the largest projects that I'm preparing now is a project that I'm doing in Fukushima, the place where a nuclear accident happened 8 years ago. And I've traveled to this area 5 times already, and I've stayed there for 8 weeks already. I wrote a book on it. It's called Dangers of Fear and Hypochondria in Fukushima, and I already did a few art projects. Now I want to go back because last summer when I went there, I went to the red zone, and the red zone is the area very close to the power plant, and it's the area where people, or most people, are not allowed to go in. I discovered that underneath a rice field over there, there happens to be a layer of clay under the soil. And you have to know about something about radiation to understand this project, which is that radiation is not a gas, it's not a virus, it contains of very tiny parts. For example, well, this could be a part of radiation, but then enlarged. So when these parts of radiation come out of the power plant, they are spread by the wind, and then when the rain falls, it falls down, and it gets into the soil, it gets into the ground. So the soil around Fukushima Daiichi power plant is the most contaminated part of Japan. And you could say that it's like the worst part of Japan. It's very negative, it's radiated. So this clay underneath the soil, under a rice field in Fukushima red zone, close to the power plant, could be seen as the worst part of Japan. And Japan has a culture in which saying or communicating something negative is absolutely not done. So for example, in language, when you ask something to someone, he or she will always say yes. And it's up to you to interpret the yes as a yes or a no. So it's not possible to say no. It's not possible to say something negative. But of course, a nuclear disaster is something very negative, which makes it really, really hard to communicate about it inside Japan. That's a big problem. So this soil that is really contaminated is something negative, and you cannot talk about it. And the Japanese culture wants to transform it into something positive, but that's really hard when we're talking about a nuclear disaster. But this is actually exactly what I'm planning to do with the clay, which is part of the soil underneath this rice field. So I dug up already a little bit of the clay, and they allowed me to dig up a lot of more because I'm planning to build the most beautiful thing within Japanese culture with this very negative clay, which is a cherry blossom tree. A cherry blossom tree is like a sign of hope, a new beginning, etc., etc. It's the most beautiful thing in Japan. So I'm planning to make 3 ceramic cherry blossom trees out of the clay that I dug up in the red zone of Fukushima. And one of the trees is going to be placed back in this red zone at the exact spot where I found the clay. One is going to transport it to Tokyo, and one to the Netherlands, and maybe it can travel. These cherry blossom trees will be made from ceramic, but real size, which means approximately 3 meters high. So these are real trees. Well, it looks like real trees, but it's made out of clay from the soil of Fukushima, close to the Daiichi power plant. So that's a project that I'm working on. Actually, most of it is kind of arranged. So I have all the context, I have the clay, I have the permission, which is very well, it's fantastic because it really took a lot of time to get to know the people and to understand a bit of the situation. And one of the important parts of this project is also that I really want to how would I explain? Well, you know, most people don't know, but because there are a lot of documentaries and books written and made after the nuclear disaster in Fukushima, many articles are made, etc. And still, every few weeks you will read something somewhere on Fukushima. But right now, I am the only person in the world that writes and talks about Fukushima after the disaster. That was actually there for more than a few hours. All these people that do research, that are writing or doing something about the situation there, so journalists, filmmakers, also artists, they all do a hit and run, which means you go in the area, write something, make some photos, film a little bit, and then you run out because everyone is scared of the radiation, which is absolutely not necessary because it's fine. It's fine. That's another story. So this, and I'm going back and forth every now and then. So I know the people and I've been there a lot. I've traveled around and slept there for 8 weeks. Which makes that I can work with the local people, and that is really, really, really important to me. You know, what you see often is, and I really hate that, is that not just artists but also journalists, etc., etc. They are kind of, well, you could almost call it lazy. They have like, they already know what's there. They already know what the situation is. So they already made up their minds, and already made their decisions, or they had their story in their minds before it even goes somewhere. Also in Fukushima, but on a lot of cases. And what is really important to me is that I really want to be somewhere. I really want to understand the situation. I want to understand the culture. I want to understand the people and to work with whatever is there. And well, that's basically what I'm doing there. So that's a long story. Right now I'm writing proposals for funding. It's really, really boring. I hate this part of my life. And I will go back September, October this year. Also to do a small exhibition and lecture in Kyoto, and I will combine these things. Okay, so that's what I'm working on right now. That's the main thing. Let me see. You research a lot of social issues in your work, yes. Do you think it is the job of artists to also work on solutions to the problems they point out? Well, the thing about being an artist is that you actually design your own job. So there are no rules for artists. The only rule is that there are no rules, basically. So you make and you create your own job. So you decide as an artist what you want to do. So if you want to create a solution for whatever, yeah, sure. If you don't want to do that, fine too. I think in the basis, every artist is a storyteller, and it doesn't matter if you're a musician, a filmmaker, a painter, or a theater maker, or whatever. You tell a story, and this story can be about the paint that you're painting with, for example. That's really abstract, but it could be your story. But you have something to tell, right? So making art is about communication, and the communication about your story, so actually your story can be something very personal, but it can also something that could be world changing. And so depending on the story, you choose your medium and you choose your goals, kind of. But I think it's always about communicating the story that you want to tell in your medium, in your way, or whatever. And you decide, it's up to you, you make the rules. Let me see. How do you communicate your message with the element of shock? I know that a lot of people would describe me as a shock artist, but I really do not agree with these terms. How I see it. Look, what I do is, in general, is I investigate everything that we call our norms. So everything that we find normal, that is common, that we do in our daily lives, the things that you don't think about it anymore because you do it every day, right? It's part of your life. I research our norms, the Western norms, because otherwise I would never dare to think that I could understand, for example, norms in South Africa, because I'm not from there. I would never understand that. But also in Japan, because I'm there. But it's always from my perspective, because I was born in the Netherlands. I grew up here. This is what I am, and I can try to understand, but I will never really, because yeah, I'm from here. It's different. So I forgot the question. Oh yeah, shock, the element of shock. So what I do, I research the norms, our norms, and I look for errors within these norms. And these are usually errors that most people won't see because it's part of the norm. So it's part of something that you're used to, so you cannot see it anymore. It makes you blind for it. When I find one of these errors, I try to enlarge them, or I put them in another context so to make it really visible. But the thing is that because these errors are part of your norms, and they are usually really wrong. I mean, it's often really bad, the things that I find. For example, everyone knows that the clothes that we are wearing are made in horrible situations in countries like India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, etc., etc. And the people don't get paid well, but still we can just buy our clothes without feeling horrible. That's weird, right? So when you confront people with that, for example, what I did is by framing the bones of human victims of the Rana Plaza accident in Bangladesh. That's shocking, but this is just the situation that we're creating. So when you talk about shock effect, and what was the question again? How do you communicate your message with the element of shock? I know that it's shocking for people, but to me, it's just showing reality. So I don't add anything. I don't make up a story. The only thing is that I enlarge something that is already there, that is already part of your life. And when this is shocking, when you experience this as a shock effect, it actually tells you that you are doing something wrong in your daily life. So, well, that's kind of it. Of course, it's no rule. No, it's not that I think that every artist should do that. It's just my way of working. Let me see. How do you survive as an artist without thinking of how to pay the bills? Well, of course, I do think about how to pay the bills. I just don't always come up with a solution. Yeah, that's also a very difficult question. You know, most artists, also the very famous artists, the very successful artists, are poor, and they will be poor for the rest of their lives. And it's not just, or it's not always because they don't sell their work or they don't make money. It's because as an artist you will always invest everything. So when I have to choose to pay my rent or make a new project, I will always choose to make a new project. So this means a problem with my rent. That's just how it works. But of course I have no income. Especially the summers are really hard because then, well, there's the art world just, it falls asleep or something like that. That's hard. What I do is, it's not what I do. Actually, some friends of me, they did this. They started a foundation for me. So the Tinkerbell Foundation, TinkebellFoundation.nl, you can search for it. Is founded 1.5 years ago, and people can become a friend of the foundation, and they can make a donation, and with these donations I do part of my work. So a lot of the things that I do are paid from this foundation. Also, I do lectures a lot. I happen to be one of the few artists that can talk, and I'm also female, and people really want female people, women on stage, because that's an issue right now, that too many men are on stage, which is absolutely crazy, but it is the case. So, but it's lucky for me because I can talk and I'm female, so people invite me to go on stage and they pay me for doing that. Since I do my work for about 20 years now, and I travel the world, and I am kind of, I don't know, a storyteller, I have a lot to say. And so this is good for me. The work itself, and of course this is no rule for all artists, but it's the case in my case. My work only costs money. So most things that I do are interventions, and an intervention is like it's basically nothing. It's a happening. It's something that exists, but you cannot touch it. You cannot hang it above the wall. So most things that I do are just not for sale, because it's nothing. It's just a situation that I create with a lot of effect. I really do know that it's often world changing, but you don't make money with it. It just costs money. So that's why I have the foundation, and that's why I do the lectures, and I often write and stuff. But there's also no rule in that, so it's different for every artist in the world, and I know it's hard for most artists, and yeah, that's just a thing. Yeah. Okay. What project was the most meaningful to you, and why? That's really hard, because as I told, I work as an artist for about 20 years, a little bit over 20 years now, and I think I know I do approximately 6 projects a year on average. That's a lot. But usually the last project that I did is the most important, because that's what I'm completely filled with. So it fills my head and my body and everything. So right now I'm really into the Fukushima thing, because that's what I'm working on already for 3.5 years, and I did some projects in between, yes, but this is the big issue right now. But for example, in 2015 I went to Afghanistan to help a man that was deported to Afghanistan because the Dutch government thought that he might have been involved in war criminal activities. And he already lived in the Netherlands for 18 years, and they deported him without being able to say goodbye to his family, without giving him the opportunity to arrange whatever. He didn't have any money or whatever, and they did it also with violence. So when he arrived in Kabul, he lost his memories, and he had no money and whatever, and he ended up in a hospital. And this was something that no one knew, so he got lost for his family. And so I went to Kabul with his daughter, and we found him. It's a long story. I made a film about it. It's online. It's called DIY Raw Cut. It's on my website, TINKEBELL.com, and you really should see it. I think it's a really good movie. It's very long, but I think it's... and this movie started a larger project that I'm actually still kind of working on right now. And it's trying to solve his problem, trying to prove that he's not a war criminal, and that I want to try to change the whole situation for him and 800 other people in the same situation. But this is really, 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 really hard, and it gives me a headache, and it keeps me awake at night still, because I am stuck. So this is meaningful to me because I'm stuck, and on one side I'm sure that there will be a solution, and I will find out a way, but I don't know how. So that's a very difficult thing to work with, because it's about real people. It's about lives of people, and that strokes me a lot. So watch the movie and you will understand. Okay, let me see. How do you deal with criticism without compromising your own views? I just do. There's something with the word compromising. Of course I hear and read critics and criticism. Of course. It doesn't mean that I answer or that I respond to everything. I can't. But and I don't want to. And it's just too much. And most critique is just stupid, because most people are stupid. And they just send their hate and stuff. So yeah. But you know, art is always communication, but it's not just sending. It's not that I'm sending stuff to you or to an audience and that's just it. Of course something comes back. So instead of sending, I want it to be a conversation. So I send something comes back, and I send something, etc., etc. So it's a conversation, and it goes like this. So critique or whatever comes back always becomes part of my work and my thinking and my views. And of course I take serious critique serious. And then of course it sometimes changes the way I look at things. But I wouldn't call that compromising. A compromise is that you want to show something and someone says, I don't want you to show this, or you made it pink but I want you to make it yellow. And then you're like, oh yeah, wait, well, maybe I make something in between, I make it orange. I would never do that. Never. But that's something different, something else than not taking someone serious. When someone has a very good reason to make something yellow instead of pink, then I can listen and I'm like, oh yeah. And if someone is right, then yeah, I would do it. But usually people are not right. And I am. Because I'm very good at my job. I'm my own expert. So most people who have critique or ideas on how I should do my work, they are the amateurs, because they're just audience watchers. They see something and they're like, oh, you should do this or that. And I do this for over 20 years, so I kind of know what I'm doing. So usually I'm the one who's right. So that's basically it. Let me see. How do you feel about the Dutch art scene? Well, this is my cat. The Dutch art scene. I don't know. I think I'm not really part of it. Maybe a little bit. I know a lot of people. I like to go, for example, to art fairs because then I see all the gallery holders, all the artists, and I like to talk a bit and know what's going on. But that's just a few times per year. It's more social, and and it's also that a lot of people know me from television and from, I don't know, I'm wearing these pink glasses, which are prescription glasses, but it's for far away, so I don't need them when I make this video. And people recognize me from that. So this makes that my network is quite big. But the art world, what do I think of it, of the art scene? I've never been a group person. I know that people are supposed to be like group animals, but maybe there's something wrong with me because I'm not. I like to work on my own. I don't feel that I'm part of a scene, even though I know most people in the scene. I think, I don't know. It's my feeling is that there's often a lot of complaints about policy stuff, about funding, about, I don't know, each other. And I think that's a very negative thing. I don't want to be part of that. I also do not agree. I know I'm really into politics, and I really follow the political discourse, and I talk with politicians a lot, and yeah, there's a lot that I would rather see in a different way, but I think it's not that bad in general. Even though I do see that things are not really getting better, but more vice versa. But still, when you compare it to other countries, we're really good. Also, I don't know, I'm not really someone that works with other artists. Again, I know many artists and I like to talk now and then with other artists, but I'm not really part of the scene. So I find it hard to answer this question, what do you think of the Dutch art scene? I'm not sure if there's actually one art scene. I think there are more. Depends on the city, depends on the kind of things that you do. For example, I also write books. And I'm a public speaker. So when you look at it from like a business perspective, I work with a gallery, it's Storage Gallery. I work with a publisher, that's Atlas Contact Publisher. And I work with the Speakers Academy. So these are the 3 companies, or I don't know, what I work with. And when I go to openings in the visual art world, it's always, often, it's connected to the gallery. But the gallery world is, I know, a very different art world than, for example, the people who do street art. They usually don't connect because the art gallery world, it's in art fairs, musea, etc., and street art usually not. For example, when I go to some kind of event from the publisher, they're all writers and they have their own world. But also writers are usually connected to a publisher. So the writers that are connected to my publisher, they're not always connected to other publishers. So there are groups within that too. Also, I work with the Speakers Academy and they organize events too. And sometimes I go, not often actually, but I sometimes do. And then I see, the people that are connected as a public speaker to a Speaker Academy are all totally different, because it doesn't really matter what kind of specialty you have. Speakers are like in all kind of specialties and ways of speaking about it, etc., etc. So it's a very weird group of people with different specialties. So I don't know what to say about what I think of the Dutch art scene. I don't know. I don't know if this is helping you. So what would you like to give to young artists? What would you like to give to young artists? Maybe you mean that what kind of advice I would like to give to young artists? Well, my advice would be invent your own job. Know what you want and know what kind of story you want to tell. Because what I see often, and I think it's a little bit outdated, is that a lot of artists start from a medium. So they say, I am a painter or I'm a photographer. And I think that's really outdated. I think it should start at the story. So my advice would be, know what the story is that you want to tell. And when you know what story you want to tell or communicate, then it's easier to know what kind of medium you should use. And it could be different in every project. That's in my case. Of course, when your story is about red paint, it seems logical that you work with red paint. But know your story. Know the context. Become an expert in whatever you want to tell the world. And don't be lazy. Work really hard. Don't expect to earn money, because you won't. And be okay with that. I know that sounds really hard. It is. But that's really, I think, the only way to deal with this terrible job. So maybe the first advice would be not become an artist. But if you really do and really want and you are, then well, this is the second advice. So let's see if there's something else. Thank you to do this. We shall send you a final version. Oh, you are welcome at Expose. That's a fashion show and exhibition of the textile and fashion department. Okay, thank you, Larissa and Nina. Send me the invitation, and good luck with your thesis. And yeah, I hope this was helpful for you. Bye.